when we partner with TPAs, what I like to see and what I have experienced is this is a complicated solution, right? And we know things can go wrong. And when we look at our partners, we want someone that is willing to run to the fire with us. Not someone that's going to point fingers.
Right.
And
You started the fire.
Exactly.
Who cares?
So,
it's on fire.
Yeah.
just based upon my history, that's where sometimes things broke down. And as we look towards positive vibes, we want to work with folks that are willing to go to the fire with us and solve the problem, show empathy, and really help out.
Welcome to ClaimTalk. I'm your host, Danielle Young, and we have, as usual, very special guests today. We're having a conversation about TPA partnerships and how vendor partnerships can really elevate the member experience with a solution like ClaimTalk. So I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with you, Luke.
Yeah, so thanks. Luke Schafer, Executive Vice President of BRMS. My kind of core focus within the organization outside of managing the company is kind of focusing on sales and the growth of the business.
My name is Lovell. I'm an implementation manager at ClaimTalk. I help onboard clients, get them familiar with the ClaimTalk program, and get them up and running before they go off to their forever home in account management.
And I'm Shay Butler, Vice President of Business Development, Upper Midwest. And with Danielle, we represent Team Midwest at ClaimTalk.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to kick this off because a fun fact about me is 10 years ago, I was, Luke, kind of in your space where
Right.
I was on the TPA side of this thing, looking at RBP solutions. So we're really excited to have you here and look forward to a good
Thanks.
conversation.
I'm excited to be here.
Today we're talking about our good partnerships with TPAs because we have spent a lot of time in recent podcast history talking about vendor struggles and how sometimes things can be difficult. But today we wanted to discuss the different things that we have in our working relationship with BRMS and Luke's team and make sure that we kind of point out the things that really help make that partnership sing and what makes it work and what makes it tick. So if you don't mind, Luke, give us a little bit of background about how our working relationship kind of started and some of our early clients and how things have gone.
Yeah, so that working relationship really started 10 years ago. Ben and I happened to get together really and sit down and kind of talk about what's going on, what's wrong in the industry, what he was thinking of trying to develop with RBP and how to disrupt the market and, fell in love with that concept and really kind of got to start to get educated on creating a model where we can try to disrupt what's going on within the healthcare space. And so we fell in love with that model. We've been doing RBP for a long time. So really kind of trying to understand and from especially going back to the original, let's call it the old school days of RBP, where everybody was a repricer, and it was just, there was a lot of disruption in the market, whether that was access issues, balance bill issues, the things that were going on. And we really just kind of fine tuned and started to look at the different model that was going on within ClaimTalk and how you guys were changing kind of the game and wanting to build out this model with Pave the Way and how you guys are doing things. And I think that was really a big differentiator for us in the market space. Yeah.
I appreciate that you're able to kind of articulate the things that make us different. And to speak to that, I would love to hear your opinion on this, Shay. Can you help the audience understand the difference between a repricer and an operation like ClaimTalk?
Yeah, so we consider ourselves a full network replacement program, and a lot of different vendors out there are just repricing claims.
Right.
And so what we're doing is a lot of front end work where we're proactively outreaching to providers to make sure that we can get access to care. And where a lot of our competitors will just reprice claims and that's it. And when we start to look at some of the TPA relationships and how we can work together, I think one of the things that we really want to focus on is that we want to make sure that we can really wrap our arms around what's going on. And so many of our partners try to be a ball hog.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to, previous, podcasts and this being one of those positive turns for what's going on in the TPA space. There's a lot of disruption that's going on in the TPA space. But really it is for us, and the word was used, I think, in one of the previous podcasts, the quarterback, right, and trying to have control. I think really for us at BRMS is we want to have good working relationships and good partnerships and not just say, oh, it's another vendor, right? I think that comes up a lot in the broker community too, is they look at all the different moving pieces within a self-funded plan and they just look at everybody as a vendor. And you've got to find partnerships and partnerships that work together from a cultural perspective and being able to collaborate. And it comes from the top down, but really it's important for the inner workings of implementation, the client management teams to be able to collaborate on a daily basis and partner together. So you kind of got to know, what lane you're in and be able to do that job well, but then also know when to be able to pass things over and let somebody else handle it.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you just articulated that it's not just a vendor, it's a partnership.
Right.
Yeah, there's two parties that have to work together. Yeah.
And they have to work together well.
Yeah, and that work together well.
Right.
Yeah. Do you mind giving us a little bit of historical background about BRMS for our audience that might not know you?
Yeah. So BRMS, we started in 93 in Sacramento, California. We've got about close to 300 employees now in that office. We've grown over the years. I mean, obviously, as we continue to grow at about a 20% clip every year. But, we do a lot of different things, right? So we started off just managing self-funded health plans. And I think one of the things that we found out early on in that game is that going out and licensing a claim system and being at the mercy of that third-party vendor was challenging for us. We weren't able to do the unique things we wanted to do for our clients, and when it came to benefit structures or plan designs or things. And so we found out immediately that we needed to bring that back in-house and develop our own claim system so we had control over that. And then in California, where we're from, out of Sacramento, the California market in the late 90s, really HMO started to pop up all over California. And maybe it was the early 90s. But the reality of it is that we were starting to see the self-funded space get decimated. And, these HMOs were coming in and saying, well, we're showing a $2 million spend on your health plan. Well, just pay us $1 million in premium. And so it was this game shift where we had to figure out as a TPA, as a service entity, well, how are we going to stay in business? A lot of TPAs were either leaving the state or closing their doors. And so we got into the ben admin space. Then we realized, and we were talking a little bit about this, Shay, is that, we had to kind of pivot as a TPA. And so we ended up stripping the eligibility out of our claim system and building our first ben admin system. And it was a software application before the internet even existed.
Wow.
And so we were out selling ben admin as a TPA, right? And just for fully insured clients, where we were doing the online open enrollment, all the EDI feeds to the carriers, doing the consolidated billing, and then all the kind of ancillary services that we still do today, which is the COBRA, FSA, HRA, HSA administration. And so, that was kind of the core. And then as the market started to shift again is when we really got back into kind of hyper-focused on managing self-funded health plans. But then the ben admin becomes a complement, right, to that. And we all know that, ben admins are a dime a dozen in the market today. And HRS and payroll systems have gotten in that space. And so it's unique for us because we built that ben admin system with a self-funded mindset. So, that is our member portal, right, in what we do. So not only can you go in and do your online open enrollments, but it's where you go to get your EOBs, your ID cards, get access to your claims, et cetera, in the system. So
yeah, absolutely. So Dallas, you have implemented and worked on many, many clients here at ClaimTalk. And so you have a really unique perspective because you've seen the various different types of partnerships we've tried to build over the years with TPAs and other vendors. Of course, we work with DPC and that type of thing. Do you mind speaking a little bit specifically to things that you value in your seat here when it comes to implementing and taking care of our cases with the TPA partner?
Absolutely. With BRMS, I really think you set the standard much higher than any other partner I've worked with, and it's not hyperbole. We're always invited to every meeting that you're holding, all of the systems meetings, the My Health Benefits, which you can tell it's homegrown in a really good way because it's excellent. So I can't say really enough about how great it's been to work with BRMS. We implement dozens of clients with you guys, and it's always been a great experience. I have great relationships with people in implementation on that side. Like one name that comes to mind is Devin. He's always on point. He's always very organized. You're the only TPA that I know of that comes to each meeting with a full-blown agenda.
I love that. I love being able to prepare for the call and say, okay, what do I need to bring to this call? Devin is fantastic.
Right. Well, and it's one of those things too, where if you don't have that, the agenda is important because you're trying to get groups implemented in a certain time frame. And good or bad, we love to all sit around and say, hey, we'd love to have 120 or 90 days to implement groups, but the reality of it is not. And so you've got to set that tone, right? And you've got to be able to have the agenda so that the people that are coming to the meeting are prepared for the meeting, but more importantly, they're delivering what you need from them in order for us to get our job done.
Yeah.
I think it also helps too because in our space, I think sometimes there's assumptions about what lane like a third-party administrator might reside within. And so sometimes if there's not an agenda, if there's not an upfront conversation that's like, hey, here's what we need you to do. Danielle at ClaimTalk, you need to do this. It can get a little anxiety inducing because you're just not sure what to expect. And I just really appreciate the transparency with which you operate over there at BRMS. Yeah, I think that's huge. Shay has a great deal of experience in the TPA side. Do you want to give us a little bit of your background on the TPA side?
Well, very similar to what Luke talked about. I was with a TPA called Maestro Health, and we decided that when we grew up, we wanted to be a private exchange. An RVP salesman. So we started in the private exchange, and so that's when it was really hot. Everybody wanted a private exchange until they realized they didn't want a private exchange. Right. And so we pivoted and went to a Ben admin type of solution that you talked about, added on the account-based information. And then my brother was the president and CEO of that company. And he came to me and said, hey, I think we're going to buy a TPA. And I was like, what? A TPA? And so the interesting story was that, as we went to the market with our TPA solution, we found out pretty quickly that it's pretty tough to sell Cigna on a national basis and be competitive. And so in comes RBP, in comes ClaimTalk, and the ability to go out and sell this solution. And interestingly enough, back in the day, they called it proactive outreach. Mm-hmm. So that's before we trademarked Pave the Way. And so I can remember Stephanie Moore talking to some of my customers saying, hey, we're going to proactively outreach to all of the providers to make sure that you can get access. So to come full circle, it's been really just overwhelming seeing what this solution was 10 years ago to, our office here in Des Moines today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Luke, do you mind talking to us a little bit about your partnerships with other reference-based pricing vendors historically, or is ClaimTalk the only RBP vendor you've ever worked with?
No. So we've worked with quite a few.
Wait a second. There's other RBP vendors?
Bro. We have competitors. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. All right.
Sells itself, but
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So we've worked with quite a few over the years, and it's. I'm glad you're bringing this up because I think it's something that should be highlighted in regards to ClaimTalk. But going back to 10 years ago when we first started in this business, there's probably 3 or 4 that we've worked with that are out of business now.
Oh wow!
But we do. I mean, we have a couple cases with 6 Degrees. We have a couple cases with Imagine. Mm-hmm. But what I look for in a partnership when it comes to the RBP space is, there's, again, we go back to kind of staying in your lane. It's who's handling the upfront. And I think that's one of the things that you guys do very, very well is the Pave the Way program. And doing that proactive outreach, it eliminates any type of upfront noise that's going on. And then more importantly, it's even on the back end. When you get a balance bill or there needs to be negotiations that go on, you guys do a fantastic job of that. But there are others out there that really just rely on the TPA to do all of that work.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I think when I'm looking at it is we don't have the time, money, or resources to try to go out and reinvent ourselves and be able to do all the things that I shouldn't say you guys should be doing, but that's what you guys do, and you do it really well. So, I mean, that's what I think makes a great partnership is you've got to do the evaluation of those vendor partners, just like we were kind of going back to people have to do the evaluation on their TPA partners, and something got brought up in one of the previous podcasts that I'd like to discuss is kind of around there's the broker market. And, someone got brought up about spreadsheets, right? And how do you evaluate a vendor partner? Well, and it's true. It's kind of like you can't evaluate somebody based on, a spreadsheet.
Sure.
And that goes for whether it's broker community or TPA or, in the RBP space. I can't go in and say, okay, guys, I'm going to go look at 10 different RBP vendors and I'm going to put you all on a spreadsheet and try to determine who's the best.
It drives me bananas.
It does.
Yeah, it absolutely makes me crazy because of what you're describing, right? Like, in order to do something as risky and complicated as reference-based pricing, you have to look the person in the eyes and say, do you know what you're doing? Because if you believe that they do, then you have a partnership established because you're going to be able to dot your I's and cross your T's and work together. That is absolutely not something you can do on a spreadsheet. Furthermore, not all RBP vendors have the same facets to even measure against one another.
When we partner with TPAs, what I like to see and what I have experienced is this is a complicated solution, right? And we know things can go wrong. And when we look at our partners, we want someone that is willing to run to the fire with us. Not someone that's going to point fingers.
Right.
And
You started the fire. You started the fire.
Exactly.
Who cares?
So-
It's on fire.
Yeah.
just based upon my history, that's where sometimes things broke down. And as we look towards positive vibes, we want to work with folks that are willing to go to the fire with us and
Yeah.
solve the problem, show empathy, and really help out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with company culture and how from the top down, how you're creating that culture within your organization. And, and then that ultimately should affect the people that are working on those accounts that actually care. Then there's a value to what you're doing is you're providing a service, but there's a human element to everything. Technology can't drive everything.
Absolutely.
It's the people behind the technology, what I always say, that makes things successful. And so, yes, when there are problems or an issue comes up, right, it's all hands on deck. Let's just get this resolved as quickly as we can, and then let's go through the process and make sure it never happens again.
Yeah.
I was talking to a consultant in Michigan on Friday, and she said, Shay, the biggest asset you have at ClaimDoc are your people, and it's your culture. And how do you measure that on a spreadsheet?
Right.
Right.
It's immeasurable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't want to make too fine a point on this either, but you're dealing with people. You're dealing with people on a health plan. People need people's solutions. We've got the advent of AI and all these things rising up, coming to the surface and helping us with analytics and things like that. But ultimately, it's people in the seats helping people, on the plans. So I think you've got that, and we've got that. We work really well on that together.
I'm curious. I'm glad you brought up AI because AI is such a hot topic right now. I'm curious, Luke, what is your attitude? What's the BRMS attitude around AI? How are you using AI right now?
We talk about it daily. So people want to auto-adjudicate claims, right? Okay, to use the AI technology, let's just build the plans, let's let it run on autopilot. People tout that they auto-adjudicate 95% of their claims, right? We don't auto-adjudicate any claims. Now, is there electronic files that come in from the carriers or from the vendors, right, that gets uploaded into their systems? But we have a human that touches every single claim. All right, it gives you that flexibility. There's a human element. I always say there's a human art to paying claims too. But then that also goes into looking at, within the call center. But it's not the AI bots that are answering phone calls. It's more of how are we implementing some AI into our software and our systems in order to help our reps deliver more accurate information. But, you've got to look at how to do process improvements within your organization. And AI can help with that. I truly believe that it can.
Yeah.
Helping your humans.
Helping your humans be more productive.
Yeah.
Right.
Be more superhuman after you teach the AI.
That's right.
how to do
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah. Do you mind defining for our audience what you mean when you say auto adjudicate, just for our listeners that might not be aware?
Yeah. So, auto adjudication of claims really that means that you have a claim system, whether it has AI built into it or not. But basically, you're going in, you're building the benefit structure, the plan designs, the inclusions and exclusions. And then as claims come in, they're just automatically getting adjudicated, which means the benefits are being copays, deductibles are getting applied automatically through the system, and then it spits out to a check run, and you're paying those providers or those facilities. There's no human that's actually touching those claims. That means for us, really, in my mind, it means less auditing practices, less human intervention. When you talk about self-funding, that's the value of going self-funded is it's your own plan. You can create your own plan designs and your own plan exclusions and the rules kind of the road. And, yes, you make an exception for one person, you need to make it for everybody. But the reality of it is you can make those exceptions and be able to maybe cover something that is excluded from the plan. And if everything's on autopilot, you don't have the ability to collaborate as a team. So that includes the broker, that includes the client, that includes us as the TPA, and maybe what should happen and how we should handle certain claims that come through.
Yeah. No, thank you for defining that. So Dallas, I did want to pivot back to you and have you define a couple of things that you think makes BRMS unique. Because I think we've kind of already informed our listeners about how great our partnership is and how much we really appreciate the empathy and the power that they bring to our solution by being an incredible partner.
Yep.
Do you want to articulate more about that?
Yeah, for me, there's never confusion as to who my point of contact is at BRMS. I know that that's a major gripe we have and not to get negative with a lot of our other TPA partners, is that it's not always clear who are we reaching out to for what problems are we having here.
Which is confusing for a ball hog in some situations.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, the communications break down. We're reaching out to several people. We're not talking to the right person about the solution that we need. And, things are getting forwarded around. But we never seem to have that issue with BRMS because they've really set clear guidelines as to who we're talking to about what. So that's always been a great experience and something that's unfortunately unique. Fortunately for you and fortunately for everyone else, that is unique about BRMS. And like I mentioned earlier, the guide rails that you have on the implementation process help keep things in scope and on time. And unfortunately, that is another shortcoming of a lot of different TPAs. Right. It's not structured, it's not guided, it's just hopefully we get there on time. Hopefully we implement the client on time, and we're always going to try everything we can to push it along, of course, because
sure.
We're very much in the front seat as well with the TPA doing the implementation. But
yeah.
And the other thing I would mention is that we've talked a lot about being in our own lane. There's always very high lane retention, I would say, between what BRMS is doing and what we're doing. It's very clearly defined. BRMS understands us and what we're doing on a daily basis with our pave the way process. If they come across a situation that they're informed about, here's a provider access issue, they're reaching out to ClaimTalk and we're doing pave the way. They're not siloing the issue. They're not trying to resolve it with, limited resources. They're not the ones to do it. And BRMS, in our context there, know that and know where to bring it.
Luke, can I put you in the hot seat?
Please.
Okay. So I've been wanting to ask this. So you've been in 26 years?
26 years.
So depending on who you are, some people will say, why is it so hard to be a TPA? Is it hard? Is this a hard business? Is this an easy business? So we talked a little bit about the razor thin margins and some of the different. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Do we have all day?
Yeah.
We do have at least 30 more minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So the Reader's Digest version of that is, it's very difficult to be a TPA. And I always say there's 4 things you should do well as a TPA. And it's what I think everybody thinks is you should be able to process claims accurately and timely. You should be able to pick up the phone and answer the phones, timely and give out good information. You have a client management team that's responsive to emails and phone calls, and you're providing accurate reporting and data to your clients and to your broker partners. Those 4 things at the core is what a TPA does very well. What's happened in the market is that there's all these point solutions that are getting brought up and brought to the, to the market. And I'm not picking on it saying it's the brokers because it's a lot of clients, right? People are getting sold a lot of shiny bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to force these things and get them implemented into their plan. And they want their TPA partner to be able to basically vet and figure out whether this works or not. And I don't think the market yet is educated enough to understand all the nuances that go on with whether this vendor is, let's call SOC 2 audited. Do they have their audit practices in place? Have they been truly vetted? I mean, we want to worry about, HIPAA and security and data issues and data breaches and everything else that's going on in the market.
Especially with AI out
in the market. But then also it just adds complexity to the plan as well as in the administration of that plan, right? It's not just like processing a claim. Now as the claim comes in, let's say from a network, reprice, but does that network even allow that cost containment vendor to be a part of that ecosystem? We've got to kind of play bad cop sometimes and explain to people like, hey, you want to use this network partner. Well, guess what? This, vendor that you want to implement over here isn't allowed. The network's not allowing it per their contracts. And so there's those challenges. And so all of a sudden I'm connected with probably 60 different point solutions. So data coming in and out. And so you start layering direct primary care, but you want to do RBP, but you want to have, a hybrid model. And so you want to have a network with this, and then you want to bring in a direct contract from a hospital. And you start creating this complex environment behind the scenes that everybody just thinks is just fine because, at the surface, it's all calm and it sounds great. But underneath, all the moving pieces that have to go on within a TPA is challenging.
Well, you said that you mentioned 4 things. Yeah. I call that keeping the refrigerator cold.
Right.
And you would be surprised on how many can actually, deliver on that. And so when we look at partners, we want you guys to make sure you can process claims, answer the phone, run to the fire with us. Don't take your eye off the ball.
Right.
And
Well, and to add to that, the consolidation in the market, whether it's in the broker community, whether it's in the TPA space, wherever,
hospital space,
definitely. You're starting to see private equity seeing that there's not, and I'm it's not private equity, it could be venture capital. It's just capital, right? Is entering the market, and it's allowing some consolidation. But with that consolidation comes challenges. You have a very good pick on TPAs for a minute. You have a very good TPA partner or company that's been out in the market for years is now being merged with another TPA on West Coast East Coast situation, and you're operating off of two separate claim systems. And now you're trying to figure out how to either operate off those two claim systems or trying to merge into one claim system. And we all know the challenges with trying to change claim systems. I mean,
changing anything in the space is very difficult.
Is difficult. So, I think that's what people are seeing, and a lot of TPAs are being challenged with these days is being forced to kind of get married and figure out how to work together. And whether that comes from a cultural challenges or if it comes from system challenges, I think that's what's ultimately then affecting the outcome and service that they're providing.
One more question that I wanted to bring up, and we started to go down this path, but given the fact that I was in and been in private equity really my whole career within the healthcare industry, we were talking about the TPA market last night, and initially our what we looked for was potentially someone with a heartbeat and a checkbook. Yeah. So there really wasn't a lot of parameters when we were looking for customers in the early days, and having to report to private equity and hit those numbers. I said it at the beginning of the podcast, but I think there's something to be said about finding the right customers and the ability to say no. Because in this TPA space, going back to having all of these different types of customers and protocols, how are you able to implement and stay on track with all these different flavors? So can you talk a little bit about that? You talked about razor thin margins. So how operationally can you handle it?
It's a challenge, and it's an evaluation process that we do every single year. For us, being privately held, family owned and operated, right? We don't have a bunch of capital and cash, sitting there. So, but we continue to keep growing, and we do it on obviously providing very good service. But it's also challenging for us, or me, selfishly, as a sales guy, and as a business owner. I think there's the yin and yang in me that says, okay, I've got to look at a potential prospect or potential client as new revenue coming into the business, but I also need to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for the organization and that my team can service that account. And so there has been many times where, I'll get into, let's call it a finalist meeting, or I get to finally sit down with the client and have those conversations and talk. And I try to vet them as much as they're vetting me as a partner, and want to make sure that they're a good fit for our organization and really make sure that the service model, and sometimes it's not always the client. Sometimes you're vetting the broker consultant at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And because that becomes almost a bigger challenge sometimes than just the client itself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad that you made that, because I think that is something that I know we all have to work with as well. Is when a consultant brings a piece of business, you're also vetting their acuity and how sophisticated they are, and whether they know where to watch not to stub their toe on a step that's maybe not the same height as the other, and it adds a layer for sure.
It definitely does. And it goes back to the partnership thing too. And right, for us, the spreadsheet is kind of automatically is a red flag for us when, here's an RFP. Oh, by the way, here's a spreadsheet with 1 million questions on it to answer. That becomes problematic for us.
Yeah, because you've become commoditized in that situation, and you're like, that's not.
And then that just shows that obviously I don't have either a good enough relationship with that broker consultant that they trust, that they can feel comfortable to bring us into their client without having to spread us across the board. And so we've done very well at building those relationships with broker consultants and those partners that we want to do business with, and we can trust that they've got the knowledge and understanding, especially when you talk about reference-based pricing. I think that's critical.
Absolutely.
Because regardless, if I take on a piece of business and it's a perfect fit as a client for us, there's a lot of still knowledge and education that has to be provided to the client. And if your broker consultant's not giving that, then it falls on us as a TPA to do. And it's just a lot more work and burden that puts on my client management team to have to be able to support that client. And then at the end of the day, it becomes a challenge.
You talked a little bit about red flags, and I wanted to ask Dallas's opinion about some green flags. So when you're working with TPA partners, vendor partners of any kind, we could just open it up to any other kind of external vendor partner. What would you call like some good vibes, green flags, things that you're like, you know what, this is going to go well? We mentioned the agenda, being organized, that type of thing. But what else do you notice in your work?
One of the green flags is, honestly, it's very simple. How are the calls going? How are the touch-based calls with the client, especially in implementation, going? Are we having fun?
Right.
Even if it is a hard topic, we have a way to bring levity to the situation. Clients really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I think it really builds retention just to have a call where you're like, God, I don't dread that.
Yes.
I don't dread having the call with these people. Like coming to BRMS and ClaimTalk, and they're rattling off a million things that now I have to take care of. It's like we're taking control of the situation. We're also having fun, and we're getting things done.
Yeah, Devin is especially gifted at that.
Yeah.
He's good at levity.
Yeah,
he knows how to break through a little bit of tension and just get everybody relaxed back.
Yes. Yeah.
What I think a lot of that comes from, too, is, and you talk about going back to, it's not necessarily the culture, but going back to how you recruit talent and retain talent within the organization and the longevity of the people within the organization, even from the top down. We talked about that as well. But it's one of those where, you've got to have a good, I think, training process from within and be able to show people the career path within the organization and allow them to grow. So, we talk a lot about implementation. I mean, implementation's been kind of a breeding ground for really getting into our organization, knowing all the nuances that go on, all the systems, all the EDI feeds, all the mapping documents, all the stuff that needs to take place, and then being able to, as much as I want to keep them in implementation, fantastic, right? Allow them to grow, and then those people become client managers, and then account executives, and then and so that it creates a very sound foundation as we promote from within, so that it gives them the stability, and more importantly, then they've got the knowledge base to be able to service the clients.
Yeah, and something else too, I was talking about this with Amy Pellegrin yesterday about part of the beauty of being a family-owned business is when you retain so many great people within the organization, you get big brothers and big sisters that sort of can move up the chain of command and help the newer folks. It does allow for our newer folks to feel like they have, older brothers, big brothers. I look at Shay like my big brother. You can call and say, hey, you have more experience than me in this. How do you manage this? How do you manage that? I think that's key.
Yeah. And it really is. I mean, and just, as I walked in the doors here to ClaimTalk, right, Ben meets me at the door and then gives me the tour as the owner of the company, wants to walk me around and tell me all the cool things about the ClaimTalk history and of the building, right? It's kind of the same foundation that we have within our organization. And my father, he still to this day walks around the office. Sometimes I have to kind of reel him back because he wants to talk to everybody. But it's that open door policy, and it's giving the visibility that, hey, we're all human, and there's not this hierarchy within the organization. And so those new people that come in, they feel that family culture and they feel comfortable.
Comfort.
Right. And then when you're comfortable, you can ask those questions and you're not afraid to say, hey, I don't understand this, or I don't know this, I need help. And then you can provide that. But I feel like if you're in such a different company culture where you've got this hierarchy and you
the
come
stratification.
and the stratification and all these different layers, you come in as a new person and sometimes you don't feel comfortable, and then you sit at your desk and you're deathly afraid to ask questions. Right?
Suffering in silence.
Right. Yeah. And then I think that also trickles up to when you're in that organization and you're a new hire and you're in a client management role and you're having client questions that are coming in and you don't know the answers to them. And so instead of being able to lean over and your trusted, counterpart and ask those questions, you just push it aside and you hope it goes away. And then that's some of the service issues I think that people are seeing today in the TPA space.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was really prevalent when I came on board, and we talked about culture, but it's not only that, it's everyone within our organization working towards a common goal. I've never seen, leadership able to get everyone run into the right direction. And, you talked about comfort, all of these different things. What we're doing is hard. And when you can point everyone in the right direction and you've got everyone under one roof, that says a lot about what we're doing in our culture here at ClaimTalk.
You can see it reflected in the member experience. We're talking about how much we reinforce our people, we help them be great. That just all trickles into the member experience and them feeling valued and them feeling like they're getting the service that they're asking for. And I think that's something we really pride ourselves on, and I see that same level of pride with our best TPA partners.
Probably the most asked question that I get from a sales perspective, and it was brought up yesterday. So the broker was like, this sounds great, but don't you need a TPA? And the number one question I get asked in a sales situation is, who's a good TPA?
Who do you partner with, right?
Who's a good TPA? And I usually say it depends on the day. But we work with 31 TPAs. We're integrated with 31 TPAs. And I can tell you that I recommend probably on one hand,
5.
And I like to look at, the client culture. So this particular customer was a smaller organization, construction organization in Michigan. So we try to look at their culture and match it up. But I wanted Danielle to talk a little bit about how important this is, because, without the TPA, without you, Luke,
right,
this doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good our pave the way process is. It doesn't matter, the fact that we've got balanced billing defense. It doesn't matter that Cynthia is the best claim auditing or has the best claim auditing team in the country. If we don't have the right partner from a TPA perspective, we're dead in the water.
Yeah.
And it means a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. It means everything. I mean, and we've talked internally and likely on this podcast about over the years the different TPA partnerships that we've been through, and how sometimes a broker partner brings us a TPA relationship that they feel is really valuable, and so we feel a sense of responsibility to partner with them and integrate with them. But to your point, I also make maybe it's a Midwest nice joke that we make about the partners we would recommend on one hand, but it is hugely key.
And in our situation, it's okay to say no.
It's kind of necessary sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And so when we recommend, and you're obviously one of our recommended TPAs, but it is that important to, the longevity of our business and making sure that we can service our customer.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable every time you have to tell someone no, but welcome to this business. I don't know what to tell you. It's a little not warm and fuzzy at times.
Yeah. Do you want the upfront small discomfort or the long-term big discomfort over time?
It's not much of a trade-off in my opinion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When you look at it in the big picture.
Take a little short-term pain, take the hit, and move on. Yep, for sure. But luckily, with BRMS, there's not a lot of hit taking. In fact, I haven't taken any hits from BRMS that I can count. So I'm thrilled. We're thrilled for your partnership. We're so glad that you came on. Good vibes only for 2026.
Right.
And so we're thrilled to talk about the good things and the great work that we accomplished together with great vendor partners who are empathetic, human, who care about what we're doing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for traveling
so much for
to be
having me
here.
on. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks for your insight, Dallas, too. I mean, you're
Happy to help.
one of our top-notch professionals here at the dock.
The doc.
Glad you're here.
Yep. Team
Thank
Midwest.
you. Team Midwest, baby. Here we go. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of Claim Talk. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope that you're also having good vibes only for 2026. If you don't already subscribe to the podcast, you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, any of those places. Go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode when it drops. And we thank you for being here. We'll talk next time.